everyone hopefully knows that Dylan is for our community affairs team, he's our local point of contact for Mid-Michigan. And so while the governor and myself will be coming in and out and through Mid-Michigan a lot, Dylan is the person who is here on the ground all the time and will be like certainly the immediate point of contact for the administration here in this region. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. We're very happy to have him on the team. I also just learned that I'm the first person testing on the technology here today.
I need to fix it. We really appreciate it here at the chamber.
Well, you know, look, I started my career as a software tester, so we'll see.
This is true public
I don't know if I'm gonna debug stuff. Yeah, that's what my parents think. You get engineering degrees, and then they ask you to fix their cell phone. But thank you everyone for being here. Governor Whitmer and I, we see it as one of our key responsibilities to just move Michigan forward in terms of improving the quality of life for people in the state. And a significant number of people in Michigan live in Michigan cities. So we thought that it would be a good idea to really take a tour to visit some of the largest cities in the state and the cities that represent a diverse set of interests in the state of Michigan, with the question about how do we make our cities thrive? What does it mean to be a thriving city? How do we create thriving cities in Michigan? So this is really just about improving the quality of life in the cities in the state of Michigan. I am a city person. I live in the city of Detroit, and so this is something that is sort of very, very important to me. This is a 16 or 17. I say or because I don't remember how many cities it's going to be, but it's going to be a lot. And we're going all across the state of Michigan. This is the 4th stop here in Bay City. We did the first meeting in Detroit, we did a meeting in Muskegon on Friday, we did a meeting in Saginaw earlier today, and now we're here in Bay City. And we're going to continue to travel all across the state. The governor and or I will be facilitating conversations just like this with stakeholders that include elected leaders and also people who are doing the work on the ground of building community and make life better in cities. So when I say doing the work on the ground to make life better, I'm talking about really 5 key areas for improving quality of life. In no particular order, they are improving life for kids in cities, generational economic opportunity, what do we need to do to create it, environmental quality and justice, transportation and mobility, and affordable and available housing. So what can we do in one or more of those 5 areas to sort of move the ball forward? And we think that if we are able to do that, we will improve quality of life. So we're having these conversations and facilitating them around. And our goal at the end of this process, which is going to take us through the rest of September, through all of October, and maybe a little bit into November as well, our goal is to emerge from this process, having had these 17 community conversations, to emerge with a set of ideas, a set of practices or programs or policy ideas that can be implemented at any level. At the city level or the municipal level, at the state level in terms of legislative action. I'm thankful to have Senator Daly here. At the state level in terms of executive action on our administration, or things we can advocate for at the federal level. So I'm happy to have Representative Kilday's office here as well. What can we do at any level? What are the levers that we can pull? What are the things that can be done to improve quality of life? Now there's an email address here on the screen, and that is an open email address because adjacent to this meeting process, we also have a public comment process. So for people who are not able to participate in these meetings, one, we are live streaming them on Facebook every meeting, but people can also email this email address with any ideas they have, policy suggestions or solutions, additional data and information about how you want to contribute to this process. You can share that with others to contribute as well. There also is a link on our site, on my webpage about how to click the public comment about thriving cities in particular. So we certainly will be sharing those aggressively online and social media as well for people to see. But this is a conversation about, again, how can we improve quality of life? So every person who RSVP'd to this meeting, and just we've done this with all the meetings, we asked you to complete a survey. And in the survey, we asked you to rank those 5 buckets, those 5 issues in terms of what was most important. And so of the respondents here in Bay City, 75% of people said that generational economic opportunity was either the number one or number two most important set of issues in the community. And these quotes on the screen are kind of a subset of representative sample of kind of what people said. This idea that, you know, each generation would do better than the generation before it is hard. There's a stubborn issue of generational poverty. Are people of color able to participate in economic development? These are questions that were comments that people gave, and they talked about the challenge facing or standing between generational economic opportunity and people and communities. So this slide is just meant to be a little bit of a summary of the fact that there are good things happening in Bay City. I mean, you know, all of you certainly know this in terms of like things like water line replacement, that's infrastructure investments, $5.6 million in improvements in terms of infrastructure also. Bay City schools, free meals for the upcoming school year. You know, there are really fantastic things and investments being made and people doing the work on the ground in communities. I want to take a step back though and tell a story. This is the story of a woman named Jacquees Purifoy. She's a woman in Detroit, and I think her story highlights what we mean when we say that there are challenges and opportunities associated with City Life Michigan. Jacquees was born in Detroit. That's her in the top left corner as a baby getting the bath in the sink. I appreciate that. I have an 11-week-old baby at home now, and I bathe her in the sink, so that's a thing apparently. And Jacquees grew up in Detroit. She went to a combination of Detroit public schools and parochial school, and played basketball. And Jacquees had a baby when she was 16. She had her daughter, and Jacquees, however, did not let that slow her down. She ended up continuing on, finishing high school, going to the University of Michigan. So those pictures on the right side of the second row are her graduating from, the one in the middle is her graduating from the University of Michigan with her little girl. The next picture to that is Jacquees graduating from law school, from the Cooley Law School. She went through that, pushed through, and $280,000 worth of debt later, she graduated from law school. She's gone on to be an activist and a leader in the community. That's her meeting President Obama. And then in the bottom, the second from the left image, that's Jacquees leading the organization that she runs in Detroit called Detroit Soup. It's really interesting service organization, really, where a number of people, hundreds of people will come together. They'll pay like $5. Everyone goes and they have a meal together. And then that collective $5 that everyone's put in the pot, they then use that to fund a community project. It's very interesting, a sort of community localized crowdfunding projects that sort of advance the ball forward in the community. Really pretty inspiring. And the picture of the last photo, that is Jacquees' daughter, graduating from high school. Her daughter is now a senior at Michigan State. This is an example of a woman who has pushed through and persevered and has just shown, really embodied, I think, the resilience that so many Michiganders embody. A person been able to overcome opportunity and make the best of it, overcome challenges and make the best of it. But I think about a woman like her and people like her all across the state. Like, what could they do if they didn't have these kind of challenges? If she wasn't fighting with poverty, if she wasn't crippled with student loan debt, like what are the things that would be possible for someone that obviously has her intellect, her talent, her tenacity? What can people do? I think these are the kind of stories that we're trying to enable when we're talking about people having access to high quality of life in cities. And this is a story from Detroit. You know, our cities also have challenges. And so Bay City certainly is not unique in that sense. You know, we still have vacant downtown storefronts. There has been the high bacteria levels in Bay City or Bay County beaches. I mean, it's really important in terms of our environment. And what should be done with the Bay City bridges? You know, I think that it's fair to say that bridges are very important in this community. And so, you know, what can we do to invest in that sort of infrastructure? There are challenges that we have to deal with. And then the last one on the bottom there is talking about lead and service lines and water and pipe replacement. So there's work to be done. And when we're looking at those 5 buckets I talked about before, housing, economic opportunity, environmental quality and justice, kids in city, and mobility and transportation, this slide is just showing, this is the percentage of respondents who chose these as their number 1 issue. And so, as you can see, actually similarly to Saginaw, we have generational economic opportunity being number one, but we have kids in cities and affordable and available housing being right up there as important. Now, yes, in some sense, we know all of these issues are connected. So this was kind of like asking you to pick between your children, saying picking one to be number one. But we wanted to do that to really kind of focus the conversation. And so I'm gonna go through for the next few slides and talk a little bit, we'll drill down a little bit about in each of these issues, some of the things that are kind of specific to Bay City. But then we're gonna come back and we're gonna have a broader conversation about, first of all, what are gonna be ideas, the practices, the programs, the policies to help improve generational economic opportunity in Bay City. And then for those who selected that as their number one issue. But for those who picked affordable housing, or those who picked transportation and mobility, we also then wanna give you a chance to talk about why is that, or why is environmental quality and justice the most important issue? And then how do you connect that to generational economic opportunity so we can still have a conversation that feels like it has some sort of shape and some sort of scope. So on housing, when we talk about affordable housing, what affordable, definition of reason for affordable is that individual is not spending more than 30% of their monthly income to pay for their housing. So these are some average prices for, median prices for what it costs to rent or to own. And what those bottom two numbers are, average wage and minimum wage, that shows that if you made the average wage in Bay City, you'd have to work 53 hours a week in order to afford this to own your home. And if you were the minimum wage, you'd have to work an additional 63 hours a week to own a home. All that means is that Bay City does not meet that threshold of people on average spending 30% or less their income on their housing. So that is just putting some numbers around the fact that affordability is a challenge for a lot of people in Bay City. We're talking about economic opportunity, generous economic opportunity. $36,000, that is still, that's lower than the state average income, but it is better than some other places. Now the unemployment rate of 10%, let me be clear about what that means. It's a relatively scoped unemployment rate. This is and staff please tell me if I said this incorrectly. This number is this counts people who are 16 or older, who are not retired, and who are currently actively looking for work. Amongst that population, the unemployment rate is 10%. I know there are other ways to measure unemployment for where that number would go up or down depending on how you measure it. But that is the population we've chosen. We've tried to hold that constant for comparison's sake across the cities that we're visiting. Then on education, you said 28% of adults in Bay City have some post-secondary degree. What we mean by that is that 28% of people have an associate's degree or higher. So this does not count professional certifications or technical certifications in that number. This is strictly talking about associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's, etc. To put this in perspective, if you were to include those professional certifications, right now the state of Michigan as a whole has 45% of adults have some sort of attainment of some kind of credential after graduating high school. And the governor in the state address set a goal for moving that from 45% to 60% in the next 10 years by investing in skilled trades training as well as in making it easier to afford college. We're talking about environmental quality and justice. That means a number of things. What I like to think about it as understanding how both the present and the history in terms of environmental impact, whether through companies or the choices that people have made, the fact that those really sort of negative environments have historically, unfortunately, come into close contact with people who are living in poverty. And so there's a justice angle on that. Also looking at air quality and pollution, rates of asthma, the fact that these environmental quality challenges have led to higher energy costs for many people, and also the fact that it's encroached on the ability for people to recreate in public space in a lot of areas. And so these are the two things we think about in terms of environmental quality and justice in Bay City. I'm talking about kids in cities. These are just some numbers that show the graduation rate, high school graduation rate, high school dropout rate. As you can see, Bay City's doing a little bit better than the state when it comes to those numbers. The percentage of children living at or below the poverty line, and the percentage of children who qualify for free and reduced lunch in the city. So this just shows that there's still some work to be done, in terms of what these kids have access to from an economic perspective. And then we're talking about transportation, mobility, roads, bridges, traffic, public transportation, infrastructure, making all that work. I care specifically about public transportation. I was a transit rider before I became lieutenant governor exclusively in the city of Detroit, so I think a lot about bus infrastructure, availability, affordability, reliability, these things, how much coverage does it get, can it work for a diverse set of people who want to get to jobs, who want to get to healthcare, who want to get to education opportunities, making the investments in that infrastructure important. So our administration did put a budget proposal on the table to try to address a number of these things back in March that included a significant investment in education, to bring some equity to our pupil spending allowance, put forward more money in terms of career and technical education, children with special needs, children at risk of coming in contact with the criminal justice system, et cetera, tripling the number of literacy coaches to try to deal with our education attainment when it comes to literacy in the state of Michigan. For transit and mobility, additional resources for projects that can make transportation, including public transit, more easily accessible to people with disabilities or to the elderly, thinking that if we can have transit solutions that work for those communities, they will by default work for the population that isn't part of those communities as well. In terms of water, we put forward some significant resources on water cleanup projects, service line replacements, research to mitigate PFAS contamination, as well as money to install hydration stations in old school buildings, recognizing that the place where children were the most likely to be exposed to lead and heavy contaminants in their water was an old school building. So put in place some money to be able to address that in every school also living in the state. I've already talked about the Michigan Reconnect program to give adults a tuition-free pathway to community college and associate's degree or some sort of professional training or certification. And lastly, roads and infrastructure, we put forward a plan that really will $2.5 billion to fix our roads and bridges, importantly, over the next 10 years. But our city's agenda needs to be a responsive one. It needs to recognize that every city is different, that every city has different challenges, has different priorities, has different needs. And so again, the purpose of this tour is to have a community conversation with you who are all doing the work in one or more of these areas, and to hear from you about what's most important and what you want to see happen. Again, from a program perspective, a policy perspective, a practice perspective, at any level, what can change to move the ball forward on any of these issues when it comes to making our cities thrive. So with that, again, this is just an email address back up here on the screen for you, but I would like to open it up. So again, the number one or number two issue, 3 out of 4 people who responded, was generational economic opportunity. So I'd like for someone to kick us off with an idea, something specific that can be done in your eyes to help expand access to generational economic opportunity for people in Bay City.
Don't everyone chime in?
I'm the shy one, so I'll start.
I'm the shy one.
So I'm going to speak for Trevor and myself, kind of starting from the economic development perspective. When you showed the clips up there of the announcements of things that are going on,
Yeah.
the one thing that you did not see there was an announcement of new jobs coming to this area in this region.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a very specific thing, and we're trying to help ourselves. So literally a week from tomorrow, we have invited leaders from the MDC and MDARD on a tour of the entire Great Lakes Bay region. We're busing them up from Lansing. They're going through all 8 counties. They're going to be going through Bay City because we want the decision makers of the MDC and MDARD to really see where the opportunities are, what's going on here. One thing I can tell you from the economic development perspective, and we get it, is that after the recession, a major focus went on Detroit, as well it should. Huge emphasis on Grand Rapids, it should. On Lansing, it should. We often see governors, leaders from the MDC advocating on behalf of our big communities. What we haven't seen is a governor coming and saying, you know what, I went and I found a lead and we're coming to Bay City with this lead.
Mm-hmm.
this next facility is gonna come here. This community is important. I'm telling you, if a factory came in with 1,000 jobs into Bay City, there would be statues of you and the governor put up here. It would have that kind of impact. So what I would say from our standpoint is this is us lighting ourselves on fire,
Yeah.
saying these areas up here desperately need your attention, that when there's a project that's looking at the state of Michigan, that it's just not always the big three counties or Lansing or Grand Rapids. That an area like Bay City, you wanna talk about this, I see it all the time. I'll go to Meyer and I will run into that employee who, doggone it, Lieutenant Governor, they are talented, they are smart, they have so much potential, but they're working at Meyer because that's the job available for them here. If, I grew up here and left for 18 years and came back, and looking at Bay City today, folks like Jen and her family who have made massive investments to revolutionize our downtown, to build the infrastructure, to build all these amazing things. The thing that this community is desperate for and clamoring for are now jobs. Where can we get the jobs? That's the next piece, because then the jobs will offer more for the kids that are here, the universities that we have here. It'll help rebuild the neighborhoods. It will build the tax base. Our commissioners will have more money to invest in the infrastructure, on the pipes, on those things. I can tell you, and I think that's probably why it's number one for all of us. We just left our board meeting, which you've been to before. We were talking, Maureen Krause is working with us now on attraction, because all we know is that this region desperately needs better jobs, more jobs, etc. So in terms of programs, things you can do, we want to see things like Good Jobs for Michigan be re-upped. We would love to see maybe smaller programs that are there, so it's not such a high volume of jobs, because we're not going to bring in the thousands of jobs that you see in a Detroit announcement. So maybe there's a similar program like Good Jobs for Michigan that benefits a smaller community, like a Bay City, a Saginaw, Midland. But definitely continued investment on economic development policy, on incentives, on things that will help Trevor bring jobs here. But just in general, just the administration understanding that cities like this, outside of the major areas, the site selectors just automatically come to Detroit. Jobs just come to Detroit. Having the big three there, not that they don't work, but things just kind of show up to them a lot of times. Ooh, they do not just show up here. We have got to work hard to get people from the outside to recognize why this community makes tons of sense for their company, ag processing facility, etc. I think everyone would say that is a thing that this community is desperate for. And folks like Trevor and I have literally put our capital as professionals in this community on helping us accomplish, or the community will never take that next step towards being that thriving city that we want Bay City to be, Saginaw to be, etc.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think what I hear, and I appreciate that you're doing this, I'll call it a field trip, with WBDC and MDAR. I think, and I would imagine or assume that part of that there's been sort of an asset mapping exercise, for the region about what the critical, important, valuable assets are and what makes this attractive. And I think that that's something that, frankly, all of our regions, our counties, our cities need to do, and that would be a good affirmative step. And then we can say, look, these are the assets here, these papers that we think would be a fantastic match with this set of opportunities. And that can then lead to job creation at a scale that's appropriate for a community, sure. But that makes sense, so I appreciate that. And maybe there should be some more field trips. Other ideas, please.
Well, I think this community is really on the verge of tipping over into greatness personally. But one of the things that I feel very cautious about is we've got lots of vibrancy going on in the downtown, and we need to not leave the neighborhoods behind. I think we can very easily become a community of have and have-nots, and I want to make sure that we take care of our neighborhoods and our people.
Is there any lever that can be pulled locally to try to help guard against that?
Well, I think housing, we need to become more collaborative, and we need to work not in our silos, but in a one direction moving forward. And I think in education, and I mean, you're in that field, Laura, you're in the education field. Our statistics, so we operate with a college access network. We have one in Bay County that actually existed before the Michigan College Access Network. So it's been around for a while, but we really need to go up to that next level. Our stats show that Bay County is at 33.4% with post-secondary training, but that does include the specialty trainings.
Sure,
Yep.
sure.
So we really need to grow that.
Yeah.
And so we need to work with, Reconnect Michigan and just other programs. If you identify businesses, right, that are on your target list, if there are certain types of skill sets they need, how can we help through that college access network get those people trained so that those employers will have those positions? We want to see those connections
Sure.
being made here locally.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think attraction's hard. I think it's easier if we start to retain and teach kids that are coming out of high school and coming out of the local community colleges and universities that we're a great place to start a business. We're a fantastic place. I need more MEP engineering firms. Please, someone start one. Manufacturing for robotic construction. There are a lot of opportunities here. I appreciate everything that the Alliance is doing with STEM. That the cultural shift on a cooperative economy versus a very competitive economy, that people want to compete for jobs versus collaborate with one another in order to grow all sectors and do better for everyone is definitely a challenge when it comes to the mindset of this area in my experience. I'm like Matt, I came home to this area after being away for a long time, and I came back and I started a business, which is challenging, and we work in real estate. We've done a lot of investment in downtown Bay City, and we struggle a lot with, commercial companies who want to be here. We utilize real estate and space a lot differently. So where's that middle ground in between building out on the highway and continuing sprawl for large manufacturing facilities versus being able to find companies that can inhabit our old buildings and build new within our cities and our city limits and rebuild that tax base and pay for our roads and infrastructure and also create the kind of place that talent wants. Because at the end of the day, business needs talent, talent wants place, and place needs business.
You know, a program that I really think is incredible, that could maybe model in other sectors is the DNR Summer Youth Employment Program, if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah.
Some of the people around the room, the DNR Summer Youth Employment Program provides funding to a community organization in our region. It would be the First Ward Community Center in Saginaw. And what they do is they bring in about 40 kids from that immediate area. So these are all kids that would probably not have, a summer job or might not have an opportunity to keep them out of trouble. And this is basically a full-time job, and they're actually paid for it. They work 3 days a week in the field doing conservation and stewardship-oriented projects, cleaning up parks and whatnot. And then they spend a day essentially in the community center learning college application skills or resume building skills or whatever it might be, computer skills, things that they might be lagging behind on in school. And then 1 day a week they often get to go on a field trip and learn about another community or go to a state park or something along those lines, and all that's included in this program. Our organization, the Saginaw Basin Land Conservancy, we're working on blight remediation all across Saginaw, so we clean up non-structural blight and we plant flower gardens and things like that, and we're doing restoration projects here in Bay City with some really cool ones coming up. And that's been huge for us because they need something to do and they need a space to do it. So what we do is, we create opportunities for them to come in and do it. So it's really symbiotic. Like, we facilitate all this stuff. Their crew comes in, does a lot of the work. They're learning on the job. And we've created jobs for some of them to come and work for us the following year. Like 3, 4, 5 of them will come and work for us as a summer job the following year on their way either into college or local college, maybe trade school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really neat because they're doing work in their own neighborhood. Often sometimes it's like, well, I live over there, I grew up over there, and I'm cleaning up a rusted out car and a vacant lot over here. Their own neighborhood looks better, so you're kind of rendering, community pride, potentially retention there. Maybe not feeling so, disinvested about their own community. There's a lot of that and skepticism about staying there. But I don't know, there's a lot of really positive energy out of that group.
Yeah.
Binds them together, and if you could take something along those lines, I just really think that is a very excellent and not very expensive program. It could potentially be in, a manufacturing type space. Could you imagine, 40 kids that are working with a nonprofit and they're going in and doing, odd jobs and things and starting to learn in there. I mean, we've got kids that have come through our program and now they want to be equipment operators and arborists they wanna go to Michigan State for, turf science and things like that. And, it's just been overwhelming, and it's added this whole level of, equity building in these communities, environmental justice, all of the things we talked about. That model is extraordinary and probably the best state program that I've ever interacted with in 20 years.
Someone who didn't pick generational economic opportunity, anyone who said housing and stuff like that? What about kids? We gotta get settled on kids and environmental quality, but like anything about kids and cities.
I put kids in cities as my number one, and my focus has really been, I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and, yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I got 25-year-olds that we go.
Yeah, so my thought always is like, I think about how much has changed since I graduated high school, and my thoughts are kind of like, when they graduate high school and then they have to decide a career, kind of going forward, or, into the future, and, unlike how my fellow Bay Cityans I never left here, I stayed, and I really hope that we can create an environment that my children, they don't have to do that, wander in the wilderness and then come back to Bay City. I'd love it if they could stay in the community and live in the community, so, but creating that environment that they can be nostalgic about,
Mhm.
and, like knowing that they're safe neighborhoods, or think about when I grew up, I could ride my bike all around, and, my parents didn't care, and I felt safe, and I just want them to be able to have that same kind of, that same feeling about the community.
This is getting back to kind of placemaking as you described, right? Like how do we make spaces that are welcoming, that are safe, that are accessible to everyone. And so, I'm trying to think about there are probably, ideas or levers that can be pulled, or programs at the local or state level to help sort of incentivize that. I mean, what does that look like to you? If I was to say, what's the thing the state can do to help placemaking efforts in Bay City?
I think we're already kind of going in the right direction on placemaking. I think that we have a community that people, when they come here, they like it, and they want to stay here. I mean, you guys came back. I know another city commissioner always talks about how they were talking about leaving, but they chose to stay here. So I think that we have a nice quality of life, but it boils down to that opportunity. It's that they're gonna need the opportunity to stay. And I don't know if we have that. I work in Lansing, so I'm going there all the time, and that's that's very burdensome for a lot of folks if they have to travel that far for work.
Yeah.
So, but if I could have a job here, I'd love it, but the last job I had in Bay City was the Ponderosa, and I go back. So, that's just what we kind of boil down to. We just have service industry, and if we could, we have a workforce, like Matt said, that's primed and ready to go. They just need to be given that opportunity.
Yeah.
Adding on the Lieutenant Governor, just kind of our education piece, I think, you think, what are the college regions here in the state? In your mind, automatically thinks Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing. From 45 minutes from this spot, we're home to Delta, Mid-Michigan Community Colleges, Saginaw Valley State University, Northwood, CMU, Michigan State Supply Chain Program is #1 in the country, and they're sitting in Midland. Alma College, we have 60,000 college kids within 45 minutes of this exact spot that we're in right now. This is as much a college town, a college region as anyone else.
Sure.
One, shame on us, we don't sell it enough, and we're working on that. But people always talk about, if I meet with companies, where do you have the talent? And I laugh, we got it. 60,000 kids every doggone year, right here. We just need to give them more of a reason to stay here. We actually have this excess of talent. All these kids come up from Metro Detroit and Lansing, Grand Rapids, and they're at SVSU and at CMU. Phenomenal kids. We gotta give them better reasons to stay. We give them more reasons to stay, more things that are going on. There comes that next boom, where we can explode, where we can go, how we can take that next step. But we have so many of the pieces are right here in place.
I think another thing that needs a long, hard look, if you're looking at kids staying within the urban centers, is the school of choice expansion policy. If you look at Bay City Public's numbers and what that's done to the flight out of the city, and you can see that around all of the state, I'm sure you see it in Detroit.
Yeah.
And
You see
it's
the-
taken the amount of schools we had and expanded how that money is divided across the whole state, which has just brought down the level of education overall. It's had a vastly negative effect, in my opinion. And if you want to change what happens in the urban centers, it would have to be looked at.
Yeah, we hear a lot about that in communities all across the state.
I would agree, Lori just almost took the words out of my mouth. My thought too is, you know, here in Bay County, we have 5 school districts, I think, is that correct? 5
No.
school districts?
Yeah, not including the others.
And is something, and a lot of people disagree, but a county the size of Bay County, a city the size of Bay City, 5 school districts is a model from 50 years ago. And is there any incentive from the state for consolidation, or, you know, some sort of a stick to get communities moving towards consolidation? I mean, I could see one school district working very well in Bay County. Like Lori said, I mean, with the school of choice, everything just gets so spread out. And everybody, you know, Diane mentioned collaboration. The school of choice now, you're competing. You know, I work for Bay City Schools, I get calls from John Glenn and Garber and other school districts for information, for help with programs similar to mine, and I tell them no. Why should I help you, who may be stealing our students or building your program? My response is Michigan and Michigan State don't practice together.
We certainly don't.
So, I mean, why am I gonna help a competitor, you know, build a program that could take students away from our district? So,
Bill, what you go getting at is it's a perverse incentive. We really want to sort of encourage collaboration. We talk about collaboration, so. Please.
I didn't at first come to comment, but I witnessed the DNR program with the young people and how they have a mentor that they can collaborate with, and it's actually a very good, I think, model of how to get people who you would originally think would go to stay, who need to have something to say. It looks a lot like the model, the youth build model that the government puts kids that are homeless or out of work, dropouts, and they put them on building. That's what I used to direct that program, and puts them on building new homes or new homes for low-income families, and then the other part of their time is finishing their high school or starting a college situation as a former teacher, and then career at NASA. I would like for Bay City in this area to look like something that would be acceptable to live at, but I'm a person with a disability now, and I'm rejected all over the place. So I think it's gonna have to start with acceptance. You're gonna have to accept everybody, not just the people that are just like you, and not just the people that have just had your experiences. Because not even a week ago, I was denied service in a restaurant because I'm a service animal. It's absurd to think about, but I see people in these meetings talking about how wonderful this is, and these are all the programs that we have, and you can talk the talk, but you're not walking the walk in your community. You've got to get your community in action. You've got to get your neighborhood in action about acceptance of every single person in your neighborhood. And you've got to teach your children that. And that's gonna have to start at your house.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody for transportation, transit, mobility, that kind of infrastructure?
I think it's correlated. I mean, to go back to education, the nostalgic idea of, you know, neighborhood neighborhood schools, and you wanna be able to walk your kids to school, and you want the feeling of that neighborhood. I love the neighborhoods that we have. If you go into the south end, the neighborhoods have alleys, and they have amazing street trees, and it's narrow streets that we can't build and design like that anymore, because fire engines are so big and the curb cuts have to be so round, and you lose a lot of that safety that you feel on the street that we have in those neighborhoods that actually have a better safety ratio, but now the sidewalk is all garbled up and it's not easy to walk on like all the new ones out in the suburbs, and it's a completely different experience. So kind of getting back to things that we do want, you have to think of it in the neighborhood with your feet on the street and thinking of kind of the pros and cons. And I don't know how school of choice, and I'm not in the education space, how it kind of affects the neighborhoods now, but I do see how when I grew up, it was you went to the hot school district then was Essexville-Hampton Public Schools, and then now Essexville-Hampton can't rebond and they're in kind of financial hardship, so people are jumping over in Western's the hot school. So we're seeing people just kind of go based on, you know, the new infrastructure and what's been updated, because parents always want what's best for their kids. So making somehow like universal in getting those neighborhood schools and really rebuilding that connectivity that you have with your neighbors and spending more time on your front porch would greatly improve our neighborhoods.
So I have one specific from the transportation piece that we see, because we try to discuss it quite frequently. And it sounds absurd bringing it up to you, because you've seen it so much and how hard it is to get regional transportation in Metro Detroit.
I'm very strong.
Yeah, I bet you do. But we're hamstrung by some of the laws, so it doesn't allow a Saginaw transit system to go outside of the borders of Saginaw County. It doesn't allow the folks from Bay County to go outside of Bay County. And so they've had to try to get creative. They'll try to meet at a county line. They'll try to meet at a university.
And this is a state law prohibition.
Yes, so it's an archaic system, but probably changing that law that, hey, you know what, people in Bay City may need to get Saginaw. They need to get Saginaw for work, for healthcare, yeah. We just don't live in a world anymore where we're just, hey, we hit the dotted lines of Bay County so our bus can't run past there.
Yeah.
It probably also just doesn't make sense. We keep having the three unique systems. There's probably gotta be a better way for Bay, Saginaw, and Midland folks to be able to bounce between their communities. So I think they don't even have transit. We have gotta think a little bit smarter about, and it's just not, some people struggle to get to work. We hear a lot in the healthcare space, and what happens here, you may be a Bay City resident, have to get to a specialist in Saginaw, and they're being readmitted to the hospital over and over again because they never could get to Saginaw to get to their follow-up appointments.
So therefore you
So our healthcare costs are increasing, and then you have the education piece. I mean, that was one of the beautiful parts of now a downtown Delta campus in Saginaw. So many of those Saginaw kids couldn't even get out to University Center, at least now they can go there. But it's impacting jobs, healthcare, education across the board. But that law in particular for a community like ours is archaic. Like, we have to change how we look at county by county public transit, and does it make more sense regionally. But you know as well as I do, and way better than we do actually, regional transit is a very, very difficult discussion, but there are some laws hindering us here in this region.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and this is something that, again, is, even in these meetings, but even in other conversations that we hear about, just like what's holding back regions from collaborating on transportation infrastructure, because when you're talking about attraction, like, that kind of infrastructure matters. You're talking about talent, retention, or recruitment. You know, I'm 36, I want to ride public transportation. Actually excited to do that when I can. And so that in terms of thinking about people who want to attract, want to retain, you know, my parents would like to be able to ride, feel like nostalgia, like my dad actually liked riding the bus when he was younger, right? And so I think that is an important part of any conversation.
I think that transportation costs and housing are highly correlated, because we don't have reliable transit systems across the entire region. It's a requirement here to really have a car and to insure that car. That's money that is almost anticipated and expected in addition addition to your housing costs. You know, I develop and build apartments downtown, and people say, you know, they must be so nice and it must be so expensive. People don't realize it. We're actually about 80% to 100% AMI are our rents, and we don't do low-income housing tax credits, but that's where our market rent is.
Sure.
That the transportation costs that people also face in addition to their housing costs, that's really where I think it hurts that low income that we're seeing, you know, for $36,000 and you have to pay for a vehicle loan, insurance, plus housing costs, groceries and everything else keep going up. I think that's really hurting
Yeah.
locals.
Sure.
Yeah, we have an employee that came out of that summer youth employment program, and then he worked for, an intermediate, he's worked for us for a couple of years. And, like right now, like his car's in the shop and I'm paying for the repairs to it because it's less expensive for me to spend a couple $100 for his car to get back on the road and try to, you know, make him more mobile because he lives on the south side of Saginaw, and I literally had a full-time employee driving all the way to the south side of Saginaw, pick him up, bring him back to do work in Bay City and drive him back there. And he also had an opportunity, he came out and he's such a hard worker. He came out to a volunteer opportunity that we had the other day, just assisted our staff. We had Dow volunteers, and the city of Bay City, Parks and Recreation Department came down to Saginaw to help us clean up vacant lots as an exchange for some work we're doing with it, you know, just to be friendly and neighborly, which is pretty cool. The DPW director for the city of Bay City said, "Who is that guy?" So that's Hoss. This guy's name's Hoss. He's, you know, it's his real name. And he's just the sweetest kid, you know, and he's just the sweetest kid. You've never seen a harder worker. We have to call him down on stuff just to like, you know, hey, calm down, Hoss, you know. You know, but so, you know, he said, boy, I'd love to hire this kid to come work, you know, for me for some of my stuff because our season's paring down. He's got about 6 more weeks where he needs that. Hoss needs the money. There's no real viable way for him to get to that job. And, you know, it's just, like you said, so, I mean, the only way for him to get to that job is right now is for me to fix his 1995 Grand Am, I think, you know, for him, because he doesn't have a whole lot of money, because he's also helping take care of his, you know, little sister, and, I mean, all these massive stories that intertwine with everything else we're doing.
Sure.
But I'll be darned if I'm gonna, you know, let that opportunity for him fade because of these obstacles.
Right. So what haven't we brought up? What's the elephant hiding that we can talk about?
Well, we could use $100 million for 2 new bridges. So yeah, answer the real elephant. I mean, you bring that with you today?
I could use $2.5 billion for all the roads you just wouldn't say.
I don't have a magic bullet, but if there was a program for the working poor, where we gave less money to those who are unwilling to work but able, and more money to those that are the working poor.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know what exactly that looks like, but I think that could be an amazing program.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. I mean, even something that would offset, you know, we overextend ourselves to make sure somebody like Hoss can continue to work for us because he's earned it, and, you know, I trust him. But, you know, I'm spending as much on everything around supporting him as an employee.
Yeah.
Then, you know, I could have 2 of him if there's some of these things. If there was some, you know, sort of easy pathway program to help organizations like ours, you know, bring people through a program like that and then into there. And on top of that, one of my full-time staff is a former admissions counselor at SVSU, and he's been working with Delta. We ended up setting him all up to go back to school now, and you know, he's gonna go there through a variety of different programs, be able to afford it. He's gonna work part-time in the admissions office there. You know, these are things that wouldn't be possible, but it's been like an extraordinary amount of effort to continue to create this one person there, you know, and, you know, if there was just some way to potentially offset or coordinate with other nonprofits to do more of that. I don't know exactly how to put the silver bullet on. I didn't expect to be talking about that today, but the more I think about it, you know, I mean, I don't know, any sort of program to help somebody like him, because I'd love to have 5 or 6 of him every year, but I can't afford it.
Sure.
And I guess I'd like to say a quick thank you. I've seen you in Bay City several times now. This is fantastic. Seeing Senator Daley here with you is great. Seeing the announcement today that the budget was first and the people were first was great. Bipartisanship, great. Working together, finding solutions, great. You know, we just appreciate you spending the time here like you have in Bay City. You and the governor have taken it very seriously. You've been here. It's noticeable. Senator Daley lives in Lapeer. We see him here. It's noticeable. Wherever you guys can work together to find solutions, you know, for our community, that's what we care about. We don't we get the political world and how it works, but our community honestly doesn't have time for that. We want solutions and we want people working together, and, you know, it's great seeing both of you here in the room, and it's great seeing both of you here in Bay City as much as we have. It's great.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And Senator, I wanted to, offer you any opportunity you wanted to remarks on any of this, or
You know, like I mentioned, when the smaller group was here in the beginning, I'm still learning about the community because I live 2 counties away, so that's why I spend a lot of time up there trying to learn about the issues. I've never dealt with water issues before that you guys have up here and those type of things, so I'm here to learn and listen as well.
Well, appreciate you being here, certainly, and know we're gonna be working together a lot. You know, we talk about politics, and then like both Senator Daley and I won an election, right? So now that that's finished, now we got work to do. So that's what we're here trying to do. We're trying to listen so we can accomplish some things. So I wanna thank you, if there's anything else, for you all speak now or hold your peace until you email me. But I wanna thank all of you for making the time to engage with us in this process. This is not the end of the process, but we will be, like I said, having these conversations in the city all across the state for the next couple of months. But we want you to stay engaged. If you have ideas that come up, please send them. Please refer people to that email address and to the webpage that you guys hope that'll be shared on social media and everything like that. And we're gonna come out of this with you guys made a lot of, put forth some ideas, have some specific policy ideas or policy changes, whatever that you wanna look at. We wanna compile all those across all these meetings, and there's gonna be some emerging trends, you already know. And so, would want you all to be engaged as we say, well, this is what we heard, what we think it looks like, these are the sort of levels at which these actions make the most sense, to be proud of, because I really wanna emerge this process of something that we all can advocate for together. I think if we're working together to strengthen those numbers, we can get these changes, in place to really start to move all forward on creating thriving cities and having Bay City being one of Michigan's thriving cities.
And if he doesn't answer your email, send it to me and I'll see him on the. I'll remind him. Say, it probably works.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I look dead at him, so.
Yeah, now you do every day.
Right. So with that, thank you everybody for participating. Please stay connected to this process, and thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
We all get a group photo. Getting a space in the room here. Ed, do you want to stand between us again?
No, I'm gonna stand on the other end.
We're just happy that boss was in the call in the room
There you
today.
go, right. I was joking today. It's like everybody's having some same place in pictures their whole life, so.
You're looking, you know, you're still.
This is back row. It's all good. This is back
It's what it's been since I was 12.
Right, your whole life. Your whole
Well,
life.
that's all people.
I do. Maybe because I did, like, I don't know.
He always gets the back.
I'm sorry. I already know
Here, you know, there's a mural out here. We have much better space.
Yeah, all print us.
That's good.
You were trying to photo?
Yep, that's good. That our clicker is their phone.
That was our clicker.
Oh, even better.
After you, I'll bring up the rear.
He's definitely before beauty, right?
Thank you. Bye.
I might call you, cause I would love, if you have time, I'll buy you lunch or whatever. If you would tour me through this